Have you ever felt like your life is just too small for the dreams you carry? Like the challenges you face are too big for your strength? What if I told you that you have been chosen, not for something ordinary, but for a purpose far greater than you could ever imagine? A purpose that stretches beyond your fears, your doubts, and even the limits you place on yourself. Today, I want to invite you to see your life through a different lens. One that reveals a destiny bigger than you think. There is something quietly profound about the human heart, a certain restlessness that cannot be quelled by mere circumstance or the passage of time. It is as if, somewhere deep within, there is a whisper of a destiny, an echo of a grander narrative that calls out to us, often in the most unexpected moments. This calling is mysterious because it does not come with a map, nor does it arrive as a clear and unmistakable command. Instead, it often comes cloaked in subtle signs, in the stirrings of hope or the pain of dissatisfaction, hinting at a purpose far beyond the familiar horizon of our daily lives. To live without acknowledging this stirring is to live merely on the surface of existence, to be content with passing through days like a shadow flitting across a wall. But beneath that surface lies something more profound. It is as if every life has been drawn into the current of a vast river whose source is unseen. We cannot trace the river back to its origin, but its waters move with an energy that carries us towards something far greater than ourselves. The mystery of this calling lies not only in its hidden source, but in its power to transform ordinary lives into stories of unexpected significance. The great tragedy, however, is that many of us spend our days unaware of this deeper current. We measure our worth by what we can see, our achievements, our possessions, our social standing, and thus we confine ourselves to a smaller world. The invitation to something bigger, something beyond our own limited understanding, often goes unnoticed or is dismissed as fanciful dreaming. Yet the truth is that every person carries within them the seeds of a grander purpose, planted by a hand far wiser and kinder than we often imagine. Consider how easily we overlook the unseen forces that shape our existence. The sun does not announce its rising with trumpets, yet its light is essential to life. The seasons do not send invitations to change, yet they govern the rhythm of growth and decay in the natural world. Similarly, the calling that beckons us forward is often quiet, almost imperceptible, yet it shapes the direction of our lives in ways we only come to understand with time and reflection. This calling does not always come in dramatic moments of revelation. It may come as a small, persistent voice, urging us to choose kindness over anger, patience over frustration, or service over self-interest. These small choices, made daily, form the fabric of a life that is aligned with a greater purpose. They may seem insignificant in isolation, but over time they weave a tapestry of meaning that reaches beyond the self. There is also something deeply paradoxical about this calling. It invites us to step beyond ourselves, to embrace a purpose that transcends our own desires and ambitions. Yet it is precisely in this surrender that we find our true fulfillment. To seek only personal comfort or success is to shrink ourselves. To embrace the mystery of the calling is to grow into a fullness of being that no worldly accolade can match. In this sense, the journey toward understanding our calling is much like a journey inward. It requires honesty, courage, and a willingness to face the parts of ourselves that are hidden or even resisted. The path may be winding, filled with uncertainty and even fear, but it is a path worth taking, for it leads us toward a life that is not merely lived, but truly alive. Moreover, the mystery of calling reminds us that we are not isolated beings. Our lives are interconnected in ways that are often invisible but no less real. The purpose that calls us forward is never merely personal. It is part of a larger story that includes others, a story that reaches beyond the boundaries of our own experience. In answering this call, we participate in a work far greater than ourselves, one that has the power to touch the lives of many and to echo through time. This interconnectedness also brings a profound sense of responsibility. To live as if our lives are without meaning is to deny the web of relationships and influences that sustain us. But to embrace the mystery of calling is to recognize that our actions, however small, have consequences beyond what we can see. Each act of love, each moment of sacrifice, becomes a thread in a larger fabric of redemption and hope. It is worth reflecting on how often the greatest purposes in history were fulfilled by those who themselves seemed unremarkable. The quiet scholar, the humble servant, the unnoticed helper, each may be called to a destiny that surpasses their own understanding. This realization should not discourage us, but rather inspire us to remain attentive to the subtle promptings of the heart and to trust that our lives too are part of something far bigger than we think. At times, the mystery of calling may feel like a burden. The awareness of a purpose beyond ourselves can be daunting, especially when we are tempted to retreat into comfort or familiarity. Yet it is precisely in facing this burden that we discover our strength. The struggle to live in accordance with a higher calling refines our character and draws us closer to the fullness of life. Ultimately, the mystery of calling invites us to live with open eyes and open hearts, to seek not only what the world offers, but what lies beyond it. It calls us to a hope that transcends circumstance. A hope rooted in the belief that our lives have meaning, not because of what we achieve on our own, but because they are woven into a greater design. This hope sustains us when the path is dark and uncertain, and encourages us to persevere even when the way forward is unclear. In embracing this mystery, we begin to see ourselves as part of a magnificent story, one that invites us to step out of the shadows and into the light of a purpose far greater than we ever dared imagine. And in this realization, we find a peace and courage that can carry us through any trial, and a joy that no earthly circumstance can take away. There is a curious tendency in human nature to confine ourselves within boundaries far smaller than what life truly offers. We measure our worth by the size of our accomplishments, the recognition we receive, or the immediate impact we believe we have on the world around us. Yet such measures are often deceptive, and worse, they become a prison that limits the vision of what we might become. This burden of smallness is one of the most subtle and pervasive obstacles to embracing a life of deeper meaning and purpose. When we look around at our own lives, it is easy to see why this happens. The world often celebrates the spectacular, the grand achievements, the bold leaders, the famous and influential. In contrast, the quiet acts, the daily struggles, and the unseen sacrifices frequently go unnoticed, as though they hold no significance. This disparity in recognition conditions us to believe that unless we are making visible waves, our lives are somehow small, unimportant, or even irrelevant. This perception can become a heavy weight on the soul, convincing us that we are too ordinary, too limited in our abilities, or simply too insignificant to play a part in something greater. It breeds a form of spiritual myopia, where we see ourselves only through a narrow lens and fail to grasp the true potential that lies within. In this way, the burden of smallness is not merely a feeling of inadequacy, it is a distortion of reality itself. But the reality, as many have come to understand through the quiet unfolding of time, is profoundly different. The universe does not measure greatness by fame or fortune, but rather by faithfulness and love. The most significant contributions are often those made in humility, away from the glare of public attention. The unnoticed moments of kindness, patience, and integrity accumulate into a legacy far richer than any fleeting accolade. One reason this burden of smallness is so hard to shake is that it appeals to our natural desire for control and certainty. It is easier to calculate our worth by concrete achievements than to embrace the uncertainty of a larger purpose. We like to think we can see the full map of our lives, but in truth the map is far broader and more intricate than we imagine. Our limited perspective causes us to underestimate the ripple effects of even the small. Moreover, there is a certain fear intertwined with this burden, a fear of stepping into the unknown, of stretching beyond what feels comfortable or safe. When we cling to what is familiar, we protect ourselves from failure, disappointment, or the sense of being overwhelmed. Yet in doing so, we also close the door on growth and transformation. The weight of smallness then becomes a self-imposed limitation. This burden is not just a private struggle, but a cultural one. Society often prizes what is visible and measurable, encouraging a mindset that equates success with scale and influence with size. This pervasive mindset can make the individual feel insignificant, especially when surrounded by voices proclaiming that only the extraordinary matter. But this belief is a dangerous illusion. It blinds us to the truth that even the smallest life, when aligned with a greater purpose, is infinitely valuable. To break free from this burden, one must begin by shifting perspective from the outward measures of success to the inward reality of purpose. It requires recognizing that value is not found in what we do for recognition, but in what we do with love and faithfulness. The life lived in quiet devotion to goodness is not small, but expansive, reaching beyond what the eye can see and the mind can grasp. There is also a liberating truth in understanding that greatness often grows in the soil of smallness. The seed, buried and hidden beneath the earth, may seem insignificant, but it holds within it the promise of a towering tree. Similarly, our daily efforts, though humble and unseen, are the groundwork for something far larger than ourselves. This perspective invites patience and trust, reminding us that growth is often invisible before it bursts forth in full bloom. The burden of smallness also diminishes when we see ourselves as part of a larger story, a story that does not depend on our individual grandeur, but on the collective unfolding of many lives intertwined. Every act of goodness, no matter how small, contributes to the shaping of this story. Our seemingly insignificant moments are threads in a vast tapestry, each essential to the whole. In this way, the challenge is to embrace a humility that is not defeat, but a recognition of our true place within a bigger picture. This humility frees us from the exhausting pursuit of external validation and invites us into a deeper peace with who we are. It is not about shrinking ourselves, but about expanding our vision to include the unseen and the eternal. The burden of smallness may whisper lies that our lives lack meaning, or that we are too limited to make a difference. But these lies crumble when confronted with the truth that our value is not measured by size or spectacle, but by the fidelity with which we live out the call placed on our hearts. In embracing this truth, we discover a strength and dignity that no external circumstance can diminish. Ultimately, the burden of smallness is lifted not by changing our circumstances, but by changing how we see ourselves. It is an invitation to rise above the narrow confines of comparison and fear, to step into the fullness of our calling, no matter how hidden or humble it may seem. To do so is to participate in a work that transcends time, a work that gives life its deepest meaning and greatest joy. Suffering and challenge are among the most perplexing realities of human life. They come unbidden and often seem to serve no purpose but to wound and weigh us down. Yet, if we look more closely, we begin to see that these difficult moments are not merely random misfortunes or meaningless obstacles. Rather, they are part of a hidden process, that shapes and prepares us for a destiny far greater than we might have imagined. The presence of hardship is not accidental. It is woven into the fabric of growth and transformation. It is tempting in moments of pain to ask why suffering must exist at all, especially if there is a greater plan for our lives. We may feel abandoned or forgotten, as though the challenges we face are proof of a cruel and indifferent universe. But the paradox of suffering is that it often reveals what happiness and ease cannot. Through struggle, we come to know the depth of our own character, the resilience of our spirit, and the limits of us. It is a crucible in which the raw material of our lives is refined. One way to think about suffering is to see it as a kind of training ground. Much like an athlete must endure physical strain to build muscle and stamina, the soul must encounter difficulty to grow in courage, patience, and wisdom. The trials we face stretch us beyond what we thought possible, pushing us into new dimensions of endurance and insight. This does not mean suffering is inherently good or that it should be sought out, but it does mean that suffering can serve a purpose when met with faith and perseverance. Challenges also have a way of stripping away illusions. They expose the things we cling to for security, status, possessions, reputation, and reveal what truly matters beneath the surface. In losing these outer supports, we are forced to confront the core of who we are. This process can be painful and disorienting, but it is also liberating. It frees us from false dependencies and opens us to a deeper source of strength that does not rely on circumstance. There is something profoundly paradoxical in how suffering works. It breaks us down so that we might be rebuilt. It humbles us so that we might be lifted. It forces us to relinquish control so that we might discover a greater power at work. The very experience that seems to diminish us is often the gateway to a new life, one that is richer, fuller, and more deeply connected to meaning. This transformation through suffering is not always immediate or obvious. Sometimes the purpose of hardship only becomes clear in hindsight, when the pain has softened and we can see how it shaped our path. Many have testified that the darkest valleys of their lives were also the places where they found their greatest strength and clarity. It is as though the difficulties were the soil in which their truest selves were planted and allowed to grow. Moreover, challenges teach us empathy and compassion. When we have known hardship, we become more capable of understanding and comforting others who suffer. Our own wounds become a source of healing for those around us, creating bonds of solidarity and kindness. In this way, suffering can expand not only our inner life, but our outward relationships, knitting us into a community of shared human experience. There is also a quiet grace that accompanies suffering, an unseen presence that supports and sustains us, even when we feel most alone. This grace does not always remove the pain, but gives us the strength to endure it with dignity and hope. It is a reminder that we are not abandoned in our struggles, but held by something greater than ourselves. Facing challenge requires courage. The courage to keep moving forward when the way is dark, when answers are scarce, and when the future feels uncertain. It requires a kind of stubborn hope, the refusal to let despair have the final word. This courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision to act in spite of fear, trusting that the journey has meaning, even when it is hard to see. In this light, suffering and challenge are not enemies to be feared or avoided at all costs, but teachers to be heeded and embraced. They call us to a deeper trust and invite us to participate in the process of becoming more fully who we were meant to be. They remind us that life is not a problem to be solved, but a mystery to be lived. The role of suffering also highlights the importance of perspective. When we view hardship through the lens of growth and transformation, it takes on a new meaning. It ceases to be a meaningless interruption and becomes a vital part of the story we are living. This does not lessen the pain, but it gives us a reason to endure and a hope that sustains us through the darkest times. In the end, the trials we face serve as milestones along a path that leads beyond ourselves. They are the refining fires that prepare us for a purpose greater than we can imagine on our own. To embrace the role of suffering is to embrace the fullness of life itself, the joys and the pains, the victories and the losses, as necessary steps on the journey toward a destiny that is larger than our fears or doubt. There is a gentle, often unnoticed current that flows beneath the surface of our lives, carrying us forward even when we feel lost or powerless. This hidden influence is neither loud nor demanding. It works quietly and persistently, shaping our paths in ways that we do not always perceive. It is a force that supports and strengthens us at our weakest moments, lifts us when we stumble, and opens doors that seem firmly closed. Though invisible to the eye, its presence is unmistakable to those who learn to recognize it. This influence is what many have called grace, a mysterious kindness that enters our lives unexpectedly and changes everything. It is not something we earn or achieve by our own effort. Rather, it is freely given, often when we least expect it and perhaps least deserve it. This hidden grace acts as a lifeline in times of despair, a spark of hope in seasons of darkness, and a steady hand guiding us toward our true purpose. What makes this influence so profound is its subtlety. It does not overwhelm or force itself upon us. Instead, it invites and encourages, working gently behind the scenes. Sometimes it appears as a quiet voice, prompting us to choose goodness over bitterness, patience over impatience, or forgiveness over resentment. At other times, it shows up as an unexpected opportunity, a timely word from a friend, or an inner peace that defies circumstances. These moments may seem small or incidental, but they often mark the turning points in our journey. One of the remarkable things about this hidden grace is how it operates precisely when we feel most inadequate or unprepared. It is in those moments of weakness, when our strength fails, our plans falter, and our confidence wanes, that this quiet power steps in. Rather than leaving us to struggle alone, it comes alongside us, enabling what we cannot do on our own. It is as if the universe conspires to support us in ways that transcend our understanding. This dynamic is not merely about receiving help, but about transformation. Grace does not simply patch our weaknesses, it changes us from within. It reshapes our hearts and minds, opening them to new possibilities and perspectives. It softens our pride, awakens our humility, and stirs a longing for something beyond ourselves. In this way, grace is both a gift and a call. A gift that sustains us, and a call that invites us into a deeper walk of faith and courage. The hidden influence of grace also teaches us about dependence. Dependence not on our own strength or wisdom, but on a power greater than ourselves. This is often a difficult lesson to learn because it challenges our desire for control and self-sufficiency. We live in a world that prizes independence and achievement. Yet the truth is that no one journeys through life alone. Recognizing this hidden support helps us to let go of the illusion that we must carry all burdens by ourselves, and instead to receive help with gratitude and trust. Furthermore, grace works in a way that surpasses human logic or fairness. It often comes when things seem least deserved or least likely. This unpredictability is part of its beauty and mystery. It reminds us that life is not governed solely by merit or effort, but by a deeper generosity that invites us to participate in something greater than ourselves. This grace calls us to extend the same kindness and forgiveness to others, breaking cycles of judgment and despair. There is also a profound humility involved in receiving this hidden influence. It requires us to admit that we cannot do it all alone, that our limitations are real, and that our need for help is not a weakness, but a truth of our shared humanity. This humility opens the door to community, connection, and mutual support. It reminds us that the journey toward fulfilling our purpose is not a solitary path, but one woven with the lives and love of others. At times, this hidden grace may go unnoticed because it does not come in the form we expect. We may look for dramatic signs or miraculous interventions and miss the gentle nudges and subtle shifts that are actually shaping our destiny. Learning to recognize grace requires attentiveness and an openness to the unexpected. It calls for a quiet heart, willing to see beyond immediate circumstances and to trust in the unseen. The presence of this influence also encourages perseverance. When the road is difficult and progress seems slow, grace is the steady companion that renews our strength and keeps hope alive. It helps us to keep going when we might otherwise give up, reminding us that our lives are held in a larger story where every step matters. Ultimately, the hidden influence of grace is an invitation to live with eyes wide open to the mystery and wonder of life. It calls us to trust not only in what we can see and understand, but in what lies beyond our grasp. This trust does not remove the challenges we face, but gives us the courage to meet them with confidence and peace. In embracing this hidden grace, we find that we are never truly alone. There is always a source of strength available to us, a presence that sustains and guides, even in our darkest hours. This realization changes everything, for it means that no matter how small or inadequate we may feel, we are chosen and equipped for something far bigger than we imagine. Grace, unseen but ever present, is the quiet force that carries us toward our true destiny. To live courageously is to embrace a call that demands more than comfort or convenience. It calls for a boldness of heart that defies fear and doubt. It is an invitation not merely to exist, but to truly live, to step out from the shadows of hesitation into the light of purposeful action. Courageous living is not the absence of fear, but the mastery of it. It is the choice to move forward despite uncertainty and the unknown. This invitation challenges us to rise above the familiar, to forsake the security of what is safe, and to risk everything for a vision of something greater. In many ways, this call to courage is the defining mark of a life aligned with a grander purpose. It asks us to relinquish control, to trust a process larger than ourselves, and to lean into vulnerability. The journey toward fulfilling a calling is rarely smooth or predictable. It is often marked by setbacks, opposition, and moments when the path seems to disappear altogether. Yet it is precisely in these moments that courage becomes the indispensable companion, enabling us to persist when all reason suggests giving up. Courageous living demands that we confront the fears that seek to keep us small: fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of inadequacy. All of these whisper lies that discourage us from stepping into our calling. Yet, to heed this invitation is to recognize these fears for what they are: obstacles meant to test our resolve, rather than to define our limits. It is to choose faith over fear, action over paralysis, and hope over despair. This invitation also requires us to embrace uncertainty. The path forward is rarely clear or guaranteed, and to step boldly means accepting that outcomes are not always in our hands. This can be unsettling, especially in a world that prizes control and predictability. Yet, courage teaches us that the richness of life often lies beyond the borders of certainty. To live fully is to embrace the unknown with open hands and a trusting heart. Furthermore, Courageous living is deeply connected to humility. It acknowledges that we do not have all the answers and that we cannot accomplish the calling on our own. This humility opens us to receiving help, learning from others, and growing through failure. It tempers boldness with wisdom and passion with patience. In this way, courage is not reckless bravado, but a measured strength that respects both our limitations and our potential. This invitation is not merely about individual bravery, but about a commitment to something larger than ourselves. It calls us to act not for personal gain or recognition, but for the sake of a cause that transcends our own lives. Courageous living is service. It is the willingness to sacrifice comfort for the sake of others, to stand for truth when it is unpopular, and to persist in goodness when it is difficult. It is a call to live with integrity and to bear witness to values that outlast the fleeting moments of life. In accepting this call, we also discover a surprising joy. There is a deep satisfaction that comes from knowing we are living in alignment with our purpose, that our lives contribute to a story greater than ourselves. This joy is not dependent on external success, but springs from the inner conviction that we are where we are meant to be, doing what we were meant to do. It sustains us through hardships and fuels our perseverance. Courageous living often requires stepping into vulnerability, being willing to risk failure, rejection, or misunderstanding. It means opening ourselves to criticism and opposition, sometimes from those closest to us. This vulnerability is not a sign of weakness, but of strength, for it takes great courage to expose our true selves and to stand firm in the face of adversity. It invites authenticity and honesty, both with ourselves and with the world. The invitation to courage is also a call to persistent faithfulness. It reminds us that courage is not always dramatic or grand, but often quiet and consistent. It is found in the daily choices to keep going, to remain hopeful, and to act justly. This steady courage builds over time, shaping character and forming a foundation for lasting impact. Moreover, courageous living is contagious. When we embrace this call, we inspire others to find their own courage. Our example becomes a beacon of hope and strength in a world often clouded by fear and despair. Through our actions, we create ripples that extend far beyond our own lives, encouraging a community of brave and faithful individuals. This invitation challenges us to examine where we might be holding back, what comforts or fears keep us from stepping fully into our calling. It calls us to confront those barriers honestly and to take the first steps toward freedom. Each step taken in courage, no matter how small, moves us closer to the life we were meant to live. Ultimately, the call to courageous living is a summons to embrace the fullness of our humanity, the joys and sorrows, the triumphs and failures, as part of a journey towards something eternal and magnificent. It is a reminder that while the road may be difficult, it is also the path to true freedom, fulfillment, and meaning. To live as a witness to a greater purpose is to embrace a life that points beyond itself, a life that bears testimony not only to what we are, but to what we are becoming. It is to carry within us a story larger than our own individual experiences, a story that speaks of hope, redemption, and the possibility of transformation for all. Such a life is a living testament, a silent yet powerful proclamation that the world is more than chaos or chance, that there is meaning, direction, and a divine hand guiding the unfolding of history. Witnessing to a greater purpose begins with the recognition that our lives are not isolated incidents, but threads woven into an immense tapestry. This tapestry is vast and intricate, and each thread, no matter how humble or seemingly insignificant, contributes to its overall beauty and design. To live as a witness is to acknowledge that our actions and choices ripple outward, influencing others and shaping the future in ways we may never fully grasp. This perspective calls us to live consciously and intentionally, aware that our presence matters far beyond what the eye can see. The role of witness is not reserved for the extraordinary or the famous. It is the calling of every person who recognizes that their life carries meaning. This witness is often revealed in the simplest of acts: a word of kindness offered to a stranger, a moment of patience in the midst of frustration, a decision to forgive rather than retaliate. These small acts become powerful testimonies to a reality that transcends pain, injustice, and suffering. Through them we communicate that there is a light that cannot be extinguished, a love that persists despite brokenness. Living as a witness also involves courage. It means standing firm in our convictions, even when it is unpopular or uncomfortable. In a world that often values expedience over truth and conformity over conviction, to bear witness is to resist the tide of indifference and cynicism. It requires a steadfastness that refuses to compromise integrity, even at great personal cost. Such witness challenges those around us to consider what they believe about life and purpose, and invites them to glimpse the hope that sustains us. This witness is not merely verbal or doctrinal, it is deeply practical and embodied. It is seen in how we live our daily lives, how we treat those who are marginalized, how we respond to injustice, and how we carry ourselves amid trials. The way we handle adversity, the grace with which we forgive, and the generosity with which we give of ourselves, all these reveal the greater purpose at work within us. Our lives become a mirror, reflecting the values and truths we hold dear. To live as a witness also requires a sense of humility. We bear witness not because we have all the answers, but because we are participants in a journey that is ongoing and mysterious. This humility keeps us open to growth and learning, reminding us that we are part of a community that struggles, hopes, and loves together. It prevents us from becoming arrogant or judgmental, and instead encourages empathy and compassion. Moreover, the life of a witness is inherently hopeful. It does not deny the reality of suffering or evil, but asserts that these are not the final word. Witnessing to a greater purpose means living in the confidence that goodness will ultimately triumph, that light will overcome darkness, and that love will outlast hate. This hope is not naive optimism, but a profound trust rooted in experience and faith, a trust that sustains us through hardship and fuels our efforts to be agents of change. This witness also has a communal dimension. Our lives testify not only as individuals, but as part of a larger body of people committed to a shared vision. Together, our witness becomes louder and more compelling, offering a counter-narrative to despair and fragmentation. In community, we find strength to persevere and accountability to remain faithful to the calling we have received. Living as a witness challenges us to consider the legacy we leave behind. It calls us to ask, what will others see in us when we are no longer here? Will they witness a life lived with purpose, courage, and love? Will our actions inspire future generations to believe in and pursue something greater than themselves? The awareness of this legacy shapes how we live today, urging us to act with intentionality and care. This calling also invites us to embrace our unique gifts and circumstances. Each person's witness will look different because each person's path is distinct. Some may bear witness through teaching, others through acts of service, art, or leadership. What matters is that the life we live reflects a commitment to the higher purpose that calls us. Authenticity in this witness is vital. It cannot be fabricated or forced, but must spring from a genuine alignment with our deepest values. To live as a witness to a greater purpose is ultimately to live in alignment with truth and love. It is to recognize that our lives are a gift meant not solely for ourselves, but for the world around us. This awareness transforms the ordinary into the extraordinary, imbuing each moment with significance. It is a call to live not for fleeting satisfaction, but for enduring impact, not for applause, but for quiet faithfulness. This way of living is a beacon to those who hunger for meaning and belonging. Our witness offers a glimpse of what life can be when lived with intention and grace. It becomes a source of inspiration and encouragement, inviting others to join in the pursuit of a world made better through love, justice, and hope. In embracing this role, we become part of a story that transcends time and circumstance. We align ourselves with a purpose far bigger than any one person, joining a legacy of faithful witnesses who have shaped history by living lives of courage, compassion, and conviction. To witness is to participate in a divine narrative, one that calls each of us to contribute our voice, our hands, and our hearts to a cause that will endure long after we are gone. As we reflect on the journey laid before us, we come to see that the call placed upon our lives is far greater than we often realize. We are not here by accident, nor are we left to wander aimlessly through the twists and turns of our days. Instead, we are chosen for something larger, a purpose that stretches beyond our fears, our failures, and even our understanding. Through suffering, grace, courage, and witness, we are being shaped into vessels of hope and instruments. This purpose asks much of us, yet it offers more in return: a life rich with meaning, a heart strengthened by faith, and a spirit emboldened by love. It invites us to step into the unknown with confidence, to embrace the challenges that refine us, and to live in a way that points others toward light in the midst of darkness. So let us take up this invitation with open hearts and steadfast resolve. Let us move forward, knowing that we are never alone, that unseen hands guide and sustain us, and that our lives, no matter how small they may seem, are part of a magnificent story still unfolding. May we live courageously, love deeply, and bear witness boldly, confident that what lies ahead is indeed something far bigger than we think.